I want to take a moment to talk to you about RŌL TV, our online video library platform. Whether you've been training for a week, a month, a year, or 5 years, you already know that you need all the tools that you can possibly get and get your hands on to continue improving your skills as you go through the Jiu Jitsu journey. And that's what RŌL TV has been designed for. We started this project about a year and a half ago, and from the very beginning, we focus on continuous updates and continuous uploads of techniques that are useful to you. Anything from self-defense to sport jiu-jitsu. Anything from individual drills and techniques to the full concepts and lessons from big players like Sophia McDormand, Christian Woodman-C, and Andres Branaskis. In addition to all this, we feature workshops, seminars, and events that took place at RŌL Academy. So you have access to all of this at your fingertips. And recently, due to a large amount of requests, we have opened the opportunity for lifetime memberships. No more cancellation fees, no more reoccurring payments, no more subscriptions. One simple payment, and you have full unlimited access to drills, techniques, full concept lessons, and events from big names in Jiu-Jitsu. How can you beat that? Go to rolacademy.tv, create a free account, take a look what the platform has to offer, and subscribe to continue improving your Jiu-Jitsu. And now, let's get back to RŌL Radio.
Jon Thomas was surrounded by people that were doing amazing charity work, and he felt he wasn't doing enough in his life to give back. So in 2010, Jon decided he was going to raise money for cancer charities. As an active jiu-jitsu competitor, he realized that there was an untapped resource within jiu-jitsu tournaments. This is when the seed for Tap Cancer Out was born. Listen as Jon dives deep into the humble beginnings of Tap Cancer Out, from selling t-shirts to hosting tournaments and now invite-only showcases, and how Tap Cancer Out went from making $36 at its first event to presenting a check for $870,000 to Alex's Lemonade Stand just 9 years later. Here's RŌL Radio with a real difference maker and a truly amazing representative of Jiu Jitsu, Jon Thomas.
Welcome to RŌL Radio. And we are live. Gary, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
You seem grumpy.
I'm always grumpy, but today I'm a little extra grumpy.
What's bothering you?
It's too much to get into. Somebody once told me I get extra scoops of Krabby in my Grumpy Flakes, and that's what I had for breakfast. So,
wow.
But we're going to get over it. We're going to have a great conversation about somebody who is making a huge difference in the lives of many, many people. So I think we should just we should get over my petty little issues and jump right in. Yes, my grumpiness.
Jon, welcome to the show. Jon from Tap Cancer Out with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How are things going on your front? I mean, running an organization as yours, first of all, can't be easy. And I would imagine it's extra complicated today.
Yeah, very complicated, sort of uncharted territories right now, for sure. We were supposed to have upwards of 26 events this year, mostly the traditional tournaments. Some were our evening sub-only, sort of invite-only showcases. So we were able to get into tournaments at the beginning of the year. That was at the end of January. But that was it for tournaments. And we sort of adjusted the way that we host our showcases in order to sort of save them, I guess, and still host them, which we've done. We've done one in Connecticut, Charlotte, and Philly, and we have one left in Massachusetts. But instead of the typical format where we'd have stage and lights and spectators and all of that stuff, we had to dumb it very much down. No spectators, very limited staff. We have to keep very limited fighters inside the actual venue, so they're not let in until they're on double deck, actually. And as soon as they finish their fight, they're out. And just to make sure everybody sort of stay safe. But we've been able to do those. Fighters just want to fight, especially right now. In jiu-jitsu, there's so few opportunities to compete and to do so safely, or as safely as possible. So we're happy to offer them that venue. So they're just super thrilled to be able to get onto the mats. We have it streamed on Facebook for free. So literally thousands of people across the evening are watching, and so they've all been great. Their fundraising efforts have been fantastic, actually significantly better than an average tournament fundraiser. So they're raising, our typical tournament fundraiser will raise around $500. Our showcase fundraisers are averaging around $700. For Connecticut, it was over $1,000 per competitor.
That's amazing.
We raised a little over $50,000 at our Connecticut event, a little over 30 at Charlotte, and a little over 40 at Philly. So the fundraising has been incredible. Those are three of our highest performing showcases ever. So we've been really appreciative of all the support everyone's shown us. And, we've had to just sort of try to roll with the punches.
Yeah, I mean, you've done an amazing job as far as organizational aspect of the events and what you've done up to this point. But I know, we both know that the road hasn't been so rosy. It's been a lot of obstacles, and I'm curious if you could share how all this started, because there was a beginning to every awesome outcome, but not always the road is so easy and smooth, right?
It definitely was not easy. I came up with the idea in 2010. I was really just looking for a way to make a difference. I had actually gone out to San Diego for an award show called the Classy Awards, which is specific to nonprofits and volunteerism and awarding those. But it's black tie. It's really high production value, and a lot of nonprofits go out there to sort of celebrate everything that they've done and be rewarded as they should be. And I just went out there to support a friend who runs classy.org, which is the fundraising platform that we actually use. But they were the hosts of the event. And then you hear about all of this amazing work that people are doing and the sacrifices they've made and leaving, lucrative careers to serve others. And it just sort of made me feel uncomfortable, because it was very obvious that I wasn't doing anything to make the world a better place. I was just sort of taking up oxygen. So I just said, I asked myself what I thought I might be able to do. And I knew I hated cancer, and whatever I was going to do would address cancer. And at the time I was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and I didn't have the blue belt blues. I was very active as a blue belt, loved it. So, I was like, I'm going to try to bring these two communities together, especially because I was competing a lot more. I didn't really compete as much as I wish I had as a white belt, but as a blue belt, I really started competing a lot. And I was seeing the tournaments get bigger and bigger and bigger, but there really wasn't a philanthropic presence. So there was this sort of big opportunity where I knew if I did something in jiu-jitsu, it would get a lot of traction, because sort of it would be the only thing in town in terms of a nonprofit that was sort of doing what I hoped to do. Of course, We Defy came along, and Mission 22, and a number of others who are doing fantastic work as well. So that was sort of the germ of the idea. I didn't really know what it would be for a number of years. Even when we were applying for our nonprofit status, sort of the definition of what Tap Cancer Out would be was so wrong when it ultimately sort of took flight in terms of hosting events. I definitely didn't ever think I would host a tournament. I didn't know anything about that. I had competed in a few, but that wasn't our objective. Would we sell merchandise? Like, what would we do to raise money?
Go back to the day when you were at that event, because you mentioned something that caught my eye. You said that you felt uncomfortable. You felt that you were not contributing to the world. What does that mean? Because listen, there is handful people in a big picture who do what you do. So what do you mean that you felt that way?
Well, So right after that event, there would be a cocktail party, like reception thing. And I was already sort of bracing for those conversations where, I meet someone and I say, well, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I work for this nonprofit. We build schools in Tanzania, or I work for this nonprofit. We activate retired military to help in national disasters. What do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm in marketing. Like I was like scared to tell people what I did, that I like, oh, I'm not one of you. I'm one of the other people who are doing nothing. And I went to Catholic high school. I wouldn't say I'm overly religious or anything, but the school that I went to really ingrained in us service for others. And I did a lot of that work in high school. It was sort of, part of it was voluntary, but it kind of wasn't. Everybody had to do it. And I enjoyed doing all of that. And I remember that sort of feeling. But then once I went to college and everything, it sort of fell off. I hadn't done a thing outside of running a half marathon for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society in their program, which is called Team in Training, where if you promise to fundraise a certain amount, which was $1,000 for me, they buy your entry to the race, and they get, they have a dinner the night before and like a tent for all the racers and sort of all that stuff, which is the model that Tap Cancer Out was based off of. I completely ripped that off and just sort of applied it to jiu-jitsu tournaments. But other than that, I really hadn't done anything. And so, it was very eye-opening. And I remember a lot of moments from that day very vividly. I remember telling my friend Pat, who was the co-founder of Classy, when we were going to the airport, I even remember like the road that we were on as we were going under an overpass. I was pitching the idea to him, and he got like super pumped. And he's like, I'm whatever you need, I'm here. He was our original board member and still is to this day, and a big influence on me. And I turned to him for advice all the time, especially this year. We were having, board catch-up calls almost on a weekly basis because we weren't even sure we were going to make it through the year. It was just one of those things that gave me that sort of feeling in my stomach of accountability. And I came up with an idea and just decided to see if I could see it through, if it could even become anything. It was at least worth trying.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a very good point. Often you hear that people have great ideas and there's no action taken on them, right? And sometimes there is, a little baby idea and really blowing it up to these executions, because that's essentially what it is, right? It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and more than just idea, it takes some plan. I'm curious to hear, how was your plan before that first event, as as you guys were getting closer to it and as it took place?
So one of my biggest bits of advice for people who ask me about what I've learned over the years or are interested in starting a nonprofit, the biggest thing is that you don't have to have everything planned out. I didn't have anything other than that idea of jiu-jitsu, cancer. And that was it for a long time. There was no business model. It was just, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out a way to bring this together. I'm going to figure out a way to activate the jiu-jitsu community, because I saw how many good people were in this community. And sort of as a byproduct, I really wanted to show the world, through whatever this nonprofit would be, exactly the type of people that train jiu-jitsu, because there was so much, misconceptions. And you'd go to the office like many, many, many people do. And, people would learn that I do jiu-jitsu and have so many questions and, think it's just like this shirtless basement bare knuckle fighting. And it was just like, no, that's not what it is at all. And I played a lot of sports, and the best sort of sportsmanship I had ever found was through jiu-jitsu. I have a lot of jiu-jitsu friends that I met because we got matched up in a bracket together. And our first time ever meeting was slapping hands and trying to kill each other. And then afterwards, it's like, oh, where do you train? You have 2 kids. I have 2 kids. That sort of stuff. So, but I had no idea what it would be. So the very first thing we actually did, we got a logo, we printed out shirts, friends and family buy them and stuff. You raise a few $100s or whatever. But we through a mutual friend, we were invited to set up a table at, a local Massachusetts MMA show. And so we just sort of set up a merch table to sell our t-shirts, just one kind of t-shirt. That was it. And I really thought everybody would jump on top of this and be like, oh, what a fantastic idea. And that we would sell out of our shirts so quickly, and that the fighters would be like using it as their walkout shirts and everything. And
it didn't happen that way?
no, the very first, so they started late. So there's actually a line out the door. When they finally let people in, the first person came to our table and bought a shirt. And I'm like, this is that. See, I told you, like, you can't walk by this table without buying anything. We sold 2 more shirts the whole night. And then 2 kids came by and gave us $6 in donations. So like we could barely pay for parking, so it really forced us, and when I say us, my wife was a huge influence in all of this as well, and a big help. And she doesn't train jiu-jitsu, but is very much the business sense behind Tap Cancer Out. But, it was like, what are we doing wrong, and what do we need to adjust? And number one, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I'm not an MMA guy. I've never trained MMA a day in my life. I'm a fan of MMA, but, if this is going to work, we needed to get to the core of what I'm passionate about, which was specifically Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So we don't go for the MMA crowd. How do we go for the jiu-jitsu crowd specifically? Number one, and t-shirts and merch isn't going to do it. How do we activate them in a way where we can like create meaningful impact and real dollars? And I never had ambitions of turning this into a full-time thing. And I've famously said many times to many people that I would never do this full-time. And of course, I've been doing it full-time for the last year and a half. But, so we just sort of looked at like what the opportunities would be. And we actually had so many. So I started targeting jiu-jitsu tournaments specifically. And it's like, okay, well, let's see, if we can just set up merch tables or whatever at jiu-jitsu tournaments specifically, and what kind of traction should we get? And I didn't even have a lot of takers in terms of, people who would allow us to get a table. They just wanted to charge us $500 vendor fee or whatever. And, we didn't have that. We didn't have anything, so it would have just come out of my pocket. And I wasn't even sure we would make it back in a night. We just had gone to an MMA event where we made $36. So, and that's when my professor said, why don't you just host your own tournament? I've done it I've done it a few times. I'll help you. I've got like the scoreboards and whatever, and let's just sort of figure out how we can do this together. If you host your own tournament, and I'll never forget this, he's like, I think you can make like $5,000. And my head exploded. I was like, whoa, that is so much money. So we did it. I got a venue. I didn't have mats. I didn't have anything. I had literally nothing to host a tournament. And we just went and booked a venue, and I made a poster. And so we had a date and a venue, and I just sent the posters everywhere. And now it was accountable for it. People were going to go somewhere and register and expect there to be a tournament on that date in that place. So I had to make it happen. And then we just started making it happen. We borrowed the wrestling mats from the school that it was at. My teammates, I was just pushing them out on the mats to ref. We had to source volunteers from all over the place. It was I was handwriting all the brackets, which was a huge mistake. We learned a lot, but I also saw how our community came out and supported it, not only from a competitive aspect, but from a volunteer aspect as well. Lots of people stepped up and said that they would help. And it was crazy to see, my good friends and family members and aunts and uncles, like weighing people in and stuff, like they didn't know a thing about
anything about it.
And they're like 165, you're good. It was crazy to see my family out there, doing that, but whatever they could do to help. And we ended up raising $17,000 that first event.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I was just floored. And it cost like $600 in total. Like everything we did was low budge or free. So there was a big ROI. And then by the end of that year, with only one event raised, we were able to give the Leukemia Lymphoma Society $26,000. And, that was sort of proof that it could work. So the next year, people asked if it was coming back, and I was like, I guess so, let's do it again. And We also hosted one in Massachusetts. So we actually did a fundraiser to buy mats so we could have a proper mat set up for our tournaments. And then it just took off from there. Every year we just started adding more and more tournaments until I literally ran out of vacation days at work. And I had sort of had the come to Jesus moment where it was like, am I going to be in advertising for the rest of my life, or do I want to do Tap Cancer Out for the rest of my life, or however long this goes? But I couldn't do both anymore. I was literally, it was taking a big toll on me. So
well, you're running a business. I mean,
Yep.
nonprofit, it doesn't matter,
job.
but it's there's a lot of effort that takes to run an event, or forget about the event, put the event aside, but actually running the company, running the operations, and making sure all this is functional. You know what's mind blowing to me, that we recently spoke with Rich McKeegan, and I know you're familiar with him. He's doing amazing things. With his organization, and it all started in a very similar way with this one simple patch that they try to just sell, and it just these baby steps, and literally it's almost the same process with you, where it started with this t-shirt, with this idea. We just want to raise $500. We just want to raise just a little bit, and you're blowing this completely out of the park. 17 grand on the first event, and the people are asking you, are you doing this again? How long does it take you to the point where you are actually comfortable and you think this actually could work, where we are going to do something tangible here, where you also mentioned that you don't want to do this full time. So like, at which point this becomes this balance where like you think, I'm going to do this for a living, and this actually could work in the bigger picture?
Yeah, it was mid 2017. So by that time we were having 5 tournaments a year. So we were based in Connecticut. We actually very recently moved down to the Charlotte area. But and we were doing it hub and spoke model. So any given weekend where we would have a tournament, I would rent a U-Haul or budget truck or whatever. I'd have to get the biggest one they had because we had so much stuff. So I'd have to get like a 27-foot truck, which isn't easy to come by. I would get it on a Friday. We'd go to a storage facility, pack everything up, drive to wherever our tournament was, including as far as Philly and Buffalo. And so these weren't short drives either. And we would set up Friday night, host the tournament on Saturday, and I'd either drive home Saturday night or Sunday morning. And then I'm back in the office on Monday like nothing had ever happened. But so we were starting to make real traction and give real significant gifts. We gave in a span of 2 years, we gave the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network over $400,000, and that was just with everybody doing this part-time. So
how many people are we talking?
Well, I mean, I didn't have a staff of any. It was just myself and my wife and sort of a core team of people, a head referee that would do my book the refs for me, our bracketing manager. She's our bracketing queen. She's actually from Canada. She's so good at what she does. I fly her to every single event, not any this year since March, unfortunately, because of the borders. But I fly her from Canada to every event because she's so good at what she does. And it's not the typing of the keyboard or whatever. It's the dealing with people when it comes to bracketing, and dealing with parents and coaches and all of the drama that comes with tournament
what
stuff.
Are you saying?
Exactly
what are you saying? What are you saying?
You know exactly what I'm talking
about.
People
are dramatic? No way.
So yeah, it's about hiring people with that fill your gaps in the things that you're not that great at or whatever. So I hire all those people, but otherwise we would source upwards of 40 volunteers in every city that we would go to actually run the event, to do the scoreboards and the check-ins and things like that. And so I was also growing a little bit more disenfranchised with my job. I really liked it. It was at I had worked at multiple ad agencies for a number of years, but the one that I was at, I liked. It had a very young vibe, and I wasn't getting any younger. I would find myself just basically sitting there in my office by myself all day, getting my work done, not really enjoying it, and just trying to get it over with so I could do Tap Cancer Out stuff at night. And I would feel like Tap Cancer Out was something I'm blessed to be able to do it, because I can come up with an idea and actually put it in make it a real thing. Hey, I think we should do a nighttime, invite only type event. Now we have the showcases, and in this year, we need to figure out a different type of event. How can we do sort of a virtual jiu-jitsu fundraiser? And Global Grappling Day was born. When you work in advertising, you make decks and cash checks, which means you come up with all these ideas for your clients. Nothing ever sees the light of day. And I was very proud with some of the ideas myself and my team were coming up with, but you never actually see any creation of anything. And so it was sort of becoming more and more empty. And I just wanted to do Tap Cancer Out more. So it was a cart and horse thing. In order for Tap Cancer Out to support a full-time salary, I had to host more events. But in order for me to host more events, I had to be full-time. So it was just a matter of, number one, how many events do we have to have in a given year to support at least one employee? And number two, how are we going to do that? Because I'm not driving all around the country. The only way to actually do that is sort of the carnival style, just be in one city for one weekend, drive 5 to 8 hours or whatever, do it in another city the next weekend, and keep going like that. But I have 2 very young children now, and I just sort of wasn't interested in that. So I needed to find someone who could actually do the driving. I found a gentleman by the name of Adam Sawyer, who is, his title is tour director, but he basically, he drives all of our stuff all around the country. He manages all of our volunteers on the day of the event. But sort of, he had volunteered for us prior and actually reffed for us. And he reached out one day and said, hey, I just want to let you know, I want to help out Tap Cancer Out more than I have been. If there's anything you can think of, let me know. And I knew he had driven actually for a different tournament organization. I was like, hey, I'm actually looking for somebody to drive our gear around. I think I'm going to buy a truck and a trailer and sort of make this, add at double our events at least. I need somebody to do that. I know you did that previously. Would you be interested? And he's like, absolutely. You just tell me where, when to be, and I'll be there. And so him and I sort of mapped out where we think the tournaments could or should be. He had a lot of knowledge about, all the other cities. He had hosted tournaments in cities all around the country. So at the end of 2017, I told my agency that I was planning on departing, but I didn't want to do it too rapidly. So we sort of had a phasing out plan. So
did they
by
know
mid
what you were
2018,
departing for?
Yeah, everybody knew. Everybody knew I did that. They didn't really know like how big it was, and no one really understands jiu-jitsu or anything like that. But they were very happy for me, to go and sort of pursue your passion. And so it was nothing but a positive, exit from there. I interviewed potential replacements, and so I didn't leave them high and dry or anything either. And so by mid 2018, I left, and we had planned our what we call a Grappling for Good tour. The first time where we would do, it was actually 8 cities in 9 weeks, because I had a wedding one of the weeks that I was the best man at and I couldn't get out of. So so we had to take that 1 week off. So we were
there was no
try
opportunity to slide in a tournament,
slide one in
wedding
there at that time.
No, I had to fly to Canada for the wedding too. So.
There you go.
Yeah,
I'd like to know, 2 young kids, a wife, as this is growing and progressing, what's the family dynamic? What is she thinking? Is she thinking you're crazy, or is she 100% on board? Let's do this.
She's not thinking I'm crazy. She was definitely on board. Always has been. She actually had an event marketing background, and she was also a wedding planner. So she was key in sort of helping plan the events and getting venues and working with vendors and stuff, and anything I needed. If like this venue doesn't have chairs, Becky, can you find a place that'll give us, we need to rent chairs? And she does all of that stuff. When we actually started hosting showcases, she was the point person to get all the AV and stage and like all that stuff. So she's been incredible. She's always been supportive. We weren't just hosting events. We had a little e-commerce store, and even pre-kids, we were shipping, picking, packing, and shipping everything out of our guest bedroom. So I mean, there'd be nights where we were packing like 100 different, shirts or rash guards or whatever had just been released. And she did all of it. And so we had always talked about bringing her on board and what her role would be and when is the appropriate time to do that. So actually at the beginning of this year, well, technically the last 2 months of 2019, she worked technically full time for us as a contract employee, and then came on full time this year. But at the last year's tour, was not only had the tournaments, and they were massive tournaments. Some of them, had upwards of 1,000 competitors, but we also had the showcases that would happen in the evenings. There'd be a lot of overlap, and it was just like mayhem. So I'm so happy she actually came on board earlier than originally planned. And so now we're a team of 3. It's myself, my wife, and Dave, who is our operations manager. And even though we just moved down to Charlotte, Dave is also moving to Charlotte. So the Tap Cancer Out sort of team stays put. But yeah, she's always been there. And, I didn't know if it was really something she wanted to do full time. It's one thing for me as somebody, I'm a black belt in Jiu Jitsu, I love the sport. She's never trained a day in her life and has no interest in doing that. So like, would she find this interesting and fulfilling? And so far it seems like she has, in the same way, she also came from an advertising background, and she comes to me with an idea, and I'm like, yeah, go put it into action. She led our whole. We have a team of close to 100 ambassadors now. I've always wanted to have brand ambassadors. We have so many people who are passionate about Tap Cancer Out and our mission and go above and beyond. And I wanted a way to like formalize that and give them a title, if nothing else, as sort of a thank you. And I just gave that to her, and it's like, I've never been able to do this. Can you just do that? And she knocked it out of the park. So it's really nice to have someone that I know that I can trust, 1,000%. And if I give her something, a task to do, I know she's going to do it well. So that's been a huge help as well.
So who's the boss?
You know who the boss is.
Yeah, we all know who the boss. Yeah, I think all 3 of us know in our own special way. And
I had to ask. Okay. What does she think about jiu-jitsu? Because that has to be an interesting dynamic, right? Obviously, she has. You mentioned marketing and event planning background, right? And you come from marketing, but you have you have obviously extensive jiu-jitsu knowledge and throughout the training since 2006 or 2007, right? What are her thoughts on jiu-jitsu? You don't have to throw her under the bus.
She's not like interested in it, she doesn't like watch it with me or anything. And but me personally, she was obviously always supportive of me. I didn't actually have her come to a lot of tournaments and stuff. It's hard to know when you're going to compete. It's kind of boring if so she never really came to a ton of those. She did pre-kids. After kids, I was like, just stay home, please. Don't worry about this. I was also a nervous wreck at all of them. So it was not fun, but it doesn't really matter. She very much understands how to connect with an audience, and in working with our customers and our ambassadors, and it's just working with people. I mean, it doesn't really matter if this was jiu-jitsu or football or whatever. So it doesn't really require her to know a whole lot about jiu-jitsu. And I think as Tap Cancer Out grows and we're looking for specific people to fill specific roles, I think taking part in jiu-jitsu or even knowing jiu-jitsu that much isn't really going to be a requirement. Like, if I need a graphic designer or something, it's cool if they know and like jiu-jitsu. And I've hired a lot of actual jiu-jitsu specific designers who train and stuff, so they sort of understand the aesthetic I'm going for specific projects. But in general, I just want people to be good at their job, and that whatever their specialization is. So she's fine with it. She's not like bored if she's at a tournament or whatever. She has a tough time watching the kids. as do I.
Mhm.
The kid matches. It always ends in crying.
Why?
No matter who
Why?
wins, it's all, both competitors are crying.
Tears are
Winner is
mandatory.
crying, loser is crying, everybody's crying.
Tears are
But
mandatory.
she's certainly learned a ton. I mean, she can't score a match, but she
That's
knows a
very
lot
cool.
more than she certainly used to.
Gary can't score a match either.
No,
so.
no, I can't. I wanted
Neither
to
can I.
know, you know, you said sometimes they're boring. You never know when you're going to compete. However, with yours, they are run extremely professionally.
Thank you.
And it seems, you know, like you said, sometimes you'll show up, you're supposed to be there an hour before, and it's 6 hours later and you're still not on the mat.
Oh yeah, I've
Um,
been there.
doing your own and especially in the beginning with such a DIY take on it, how did you, and having like friends and family run stuff or help you,
Right.
how did you make sure, and I know there was hiccups, but how did you make sure that these things ran smoothly, so that, you know, everybody would want to be at the next one?
That is the cornerstone, I think, of what our Tap Cancer Out events are all about. You know, it's really what I didn't want people to think of when they heard that, like, there was going to be a charity jiu-jitsu tournament, is the same as, like, if you, so my wife played collegiate volleyball, as did I. So if somebody asks us to play in like a backyard charity volleyball tournament, the answer is no, because it's just going to be garbage volleyball. And this, like, if you play basketball and then you hear about a charity basketball tournament, people are going to be double dribbling and it's just going to be like not great. So I didn't want people to think that that's what a charity jiu-jitsu tournament was going to be. Now, in the first 1, 2, 3 tournaments we had, of course, we had no money. We had to figure out things, and wrestling mats aren't ideal. And we were like using painter's tape to tape off the rings and stuff. But very quickly we got up to speed. Actually, only the first tournament did we ever use wrestling mats. By our second tournament, we had our own, Dahmer mat set up.
Mhm.
So yeah, very quickly I wanted to upgrade everything as much as I could, because I knew that it could be a differentiator, because every tournament I would go to was chaos and nobody knew what was going on. You could never find whoever was actually in charge and who was sort of going to answer for all of it. And like I did, my wife came to a tournament. I was supposed to fight at 10. She sat there from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. and I still hadn't fought, and she had to leave because she had to work that evening. And that was in New Jersey. So it was the hour-and-a-half drive to New Jersey, the 6 hours sitting at the tournament, or 5 hours, and then driving home. She got nothing out of it, and I was horrified. And of course, I did terribly at that tournament, and like I was just so pissed off at what was going on, and it didn't change. And to be honest, a lot of it hasn't changed, because I still compete. I haven't competed as a black belt yet, but up through actually brown belt was my most active years as a competitor. And mostly I would do IBJJF tournaments, but I would still do some of the more local ones, and some were good, but some were not good. And they've been around a long time.
I think you're very kind about this, because I actually disagree. I think there is handful of tournaments that are run properly, and majority are garbage. I mean, I've been training for 20 years now, and it's like I remember days way back in the day, like 15 years ago, where we're not gonna speak any names, but it's similar experience to yours. I'm bracketed at 10 a.m. and I'm not fighting until 10 p.m. Like, I mean, and this still continues going. There are still tournaments today where the competitors experience this enormous delay. Like, forget about the competitor experience, but what about their family? What about the spectators?
Yeah.
What about all of this, right? And how in the world, I always ask myself the questions, how in the world this organization is still in business? Like, why people continue coming back?
And they flock to it. Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
I don't know. I don't know. But I knew that if we hosted an extremely well-run tournament, that it would be a differentiator, and people would be like, wow, not only if we're just looking at tournaments in general, and I'm not going to claim that we're the best tournament, but if we're just looking at tournaments in general, if you are a well-run tournament, more people are going to want to, take part in your event. Oh, and by the way, we're raising money, for cancer research and all these amazing organizations. So, we only come to cities once a year. So, I just want to make sure that time, that when we're in your city, that we are a can't miss thing, no matter what other tournament tries to host it on the same day, near us. It's like, well, that tournament's going to be here 3 or 4 times a year. But Tap Cancer Out, it's only here once a year. It's a very, very well run, and, it's for a great cause. I have to be part of this. And so that's what we sort of made. And also we wanted like the FOMO, we wanted the stories to go, somebody competes in it and they're like, man, it was such a great experience. I can't believe you missed it. You better be a part of it next year. And I wanted, instructors and gym owners to experience a good tournament and go back and feel, positive and tell their students that, I think you should take part in this tournament. It's going to be safe. You're going to know when you're fighting, because a lot of, as school owners and instructors, they'll say, you guys are not competing in this tournament or that tournament. I'll never coach you if you go to like whatever tournament. So they have a lot to say, and I want them, to have good things to say about our tournaments. So that, since day one, and even that first tournament, we started a little late because I had to handwrite the brackets, but once we started, everything was on time, and we've been on time ever since. We're notorious for ending way early, and that I just have no patience for it whatsoever. I still get incredibly nervous every time I wake up on the day of a tournament. I'm waiting for the day when it's like relaxing and fun and like whatever. Why? But no, I'm just terrified because what's going to go wrong that's going to delay the tournament? Like
but hold on a minute.
Like if the internet goes out, it might take a half hour to fix or whatever, and now we're going to be a half hour behind schedule. Like I care about it that much.
Are all tournaments ideal? I mean, are they all perfect?
Well, no, none of them are, but
that's what I'm saying.
That doesn't mean I'm not going to, strive for perfection.
Well, I think the one great thing about what you do is people aren't going to go away from it or leave it going, well, at least it was for cancer. They're going to go away from it going, I can't wait till next year because, man, this was awesome. And I'm going to do even more next year, fundraising wise or whatever, to contribute,
Yeah. And the more well organized it is, the less stressful it is for the staff as well. Like, I don't want all of these volunteers coming and being like, oh my God, that was an S show. Nobody knew what was going on. I had all these questions and no one was answering them. People were yelling at me and coaches were yelling at me and I couldn't fix it. Like, I don't want them to experience that either. So like the better run an event is, the better experience it is for every single person in that building. Even like as a renter of a venue, like I need it to be run well because I want them to accept us back the next year and everybody to be happy about it. I don't want us to be like running 2 hours late after we're supposed to be out of there. So, and a lot of us have flights to catch that evening anyways. So like, I better make sure all of this is on time always. So, but it's also just streamlining the process. We have a very specific process for how we do things, and it's unlike any other tournament. We will not do the thing where we tell you exactly who you're matched up against, what mat and what ring. We have so many people who miss weight and stuff and have to be shifted around. And, the IBJJF can just disqualify you for being 1/10 of a pound overweight, and then your opponent just gets a bye. But imagine somebody being
you can't do that.
3 pounds overweight, but they raised $10,000 for us. Am I going to disqualify that person, or am I just going to bump them up a weight class? Right. So
probably the last 10K you saw, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we move people around. We never disqualify people except unless they just don't show up. But yeah, so we're constantly shifting people. So we have to do things a little differently. But like, this is the way that I believe our tournaments run most efficiently. So that's the way we do it, and everybody seems to like it. And we're always trying to improve too. So like we did sort of flip scoreboards forever, and even when I saw other tournaments getting to the electronic scoreboards and stuff, I needed to make sure that we were working with a software that I was comfortable with, that I could trust. And that we would have sort of internet infrastructure that would support it. So it didn't, because I've been at tournaments that had the fancy electronic scoreboard stuff and it all stopped working and they had to pull out, the manual flip boards or what, like I didn't want to do that. So I waited until I was comfortable in deploying that, and then we deploy it. And so we're always trying to get better every single tournament to make that experience better.
What do you think is one single thing that is the most challenging every tournament? What's the one thing that you deal with on an ongoing basis that it's just a drag?
That I can't make everybody happy at every tournament. There is always one or two, customer service issues that I have to deal with. And, there's nothing I can do to make it better, whether it's our fault or not. I mean, sometimes it's not our fault, it's their fault, but they think it's our fault.
It's
and I'll
always
just
your
say,
fault.
okay, it's my fault. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm happy to say it's my fault. And, I've given back so many registration fees. It's like, I'm not going to die on that hill of like keeping people's money or anything like that. Like, I'll do whatever I can do to make you happy. You can compete in our tournaments for free for the rest of your life. I don't care. But there's just like little things, like the wrong medals happen to be given out on the podium and somebody only realizes it later. And they took a picture in second place, but they should have been in first place. And now I can't get the people back together and they want the picture of them on the podium with every, it's like, I'm human. We're all human. We make mistakes at every event, but
you're dealing with people. You're dealing with jiu-jitsu people. So
yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say it's competitive, but at the same time, you got to realize why you're there and what you're doing. So they got to let it roll off their back sometimes too, especially when it's something small like that.
Yeah, I just want to make everybody happy, and I can't always do that. And I don't ever want to take the cop out of like, hey, it's okay that this happened. It's for charity. Like, no, it's not okay if we make a mistake. I'll apologize for it, and we will fix it, and we make sure it won't happen again. And we definitely learn from a lot of the mistakes. And it's like, okay, we're never going to do bracketing for kids that way. We need to switch it to this way because it just creates like mayhem or, so we just try to always learn from it and move on. And I can't tell you how many coaches, and it doesn't happen a lot. But I've had coaches who had sort of a bad experience with us. We disqualified a competitor for the most egregious slam I've ever seen in my life. But for some reason he thought he shouldn't be disqualified. And he said, I'm never bringing my students back to your tournaments ever again, ever. They brought the most people. The next year, they brought the most people than any other school.
Yeah. So it's it's in that moment, right? Everybody's fired up.
They settled that. And so I'm never going to be like, fine, I'll never let your students be part of my tournament again. Like, I'll never do that. It's like, okay, I would really love to have you guys back. I hope you don't feel that way. If you do, I understand. But if you don't, we'd love to have you back. I'm never going to do that. So,
but on the flip side, you can't please everybody, right? I mean, it's just like any other business. You can't please everybody all around you. This is not 100% success from that perspective, right? You do have a specific demographic and you're trying to target that. Now, obviously you want to get the most return on that investment and the people who are you're attracting. Right. I'm curious, what is your, and this is me, instructor speaking now, but I'm curious, what is your train of thought on selecting the referees? Probably one of the most controversial topic when it comes to tournaments, right? Who's qualified? Who's not qualified? How are they refereeing? How are they not refereeing? Because I'm sure you have run into situations where it's a close call. It might even be a wrong call. I mean, I'm the one, I'll admit, I ref many tournaments and I made wrong calls. Like it looks different from the angle where you are at versus where it really happened, right? And we are humans. What's your take on all this?
I mean, I've been sitting at a table working the scoreboard, like filling in for a volunteer, and watch the referee completely whiff a call and miss important points. And I didn't start screaming anything. I talked to the referee afterwards and they're like, oh yeah, I did miss that. But I mean, I understand that people make mistakes. I have a head referee. His name's Sergio Pimentel. He's out of Baltimore. He has his own school there at Bel Air BJJ. I'm not a referee. I'm not trained to be a referee. I don't know anything about refereeing. And so I hire somebody who does know about refereeing. So he hires all the referees. Of course, we want the highest, belts possible, the most experience possible, all that sort of stuff. It's one of the reasons why we stick with an IBJJF rule set where other tournaments, will sort of make their own rule set. to appease a certain demographic of fighters, which is totally fine, and I get it, and I don't necessarily agree with all of the IBJJF rules, but it allows us to, if somebody has reffed IBJJF tournaments before, it's sort of a rule set that we know they're familiar with, rather than having to train every single referee in our rule set, so to speak. So it makes, sourcing referees a little easier. And, we've had referees that didn't do a good job, and we just didn't ask them back again. We had one referee that we replaced mid-tournament. They were just not good enough. And so we replaced them. And, no hard feelings, paid them right there in the spot. But I can't let you go out there and miss another call, so it is what it is. No hard feelings, all the best, but obviously I need to ensure that the quality of our product. And so that's how we deal with it. Sergio is really good. I've had plenty of people, and I tell them specifically on my morning announcements, do not come to me with a video on your camera of a call being missed or somebody tapping who didn't tap, or like whatever.
There goes my plan.
Like, don't bring it to me. I'm not going to do anything, I promise you. And there's zero chance that any result is going to be reversed. But so I'll deflect it to him if he ever gets it, but he, watches the video and he'll explain the rules and the nuances. A lot of it just has to do with, people, even professors and instructors or coaches, not understanding the nuances of some of the rules. But you also have parents who don't understand the rules at all and very much think one thing is true, which is totally not. So it's just customer service and sort of dealing with them. But yeah, we've replaced referees. We've not asked them back. I mean, that's the good thing about it. It's not like hire them on full time and they're coming to every single event. The next time we're in that city, we don't hire them and we hire somebody else.
But you also mentioned something important, right? I mean, referee has a responsibility of make the right calls, but also there's a huge responsibility on the competitor and the instructor or coach to know the rules that they are entering in. And if you don't like the rules, I'm sorry, but you should not be in that room, right? I mean, like it is you entering into a rule set, and we going by this rule set. If you're not familiar with them, then you are taking the risk. And I mean, I'm sure you have seen it. I've seen it many times where there are disqualifications and the competitor even has no clue why it happened. That's the unfortunate part. So I tell my students all the time, make sure, print out the whole 50 pages, whatever it is, read it, memorize it. Let's go over it. But you need to know your stuff. You need to know what you're going into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's rough. I was listening to Travis Stevens once, and somebody asked him why he doesn't compete in BJJ, and he was like, "There's too many rules." I came from judo, Olympic judo, where know always exactly what the rule set is through the time you're a kid till the time you're in the Olympics. I'm not going to show up at a tournament and have somebody tell me something different the day of. So it's just, I think the planning you do is amazing, because all these little things you're talking about are things that I think most people don't take into consideration when they're attending a tournament, much less trying to put one on, so hats off to you for all that. I think it's great.
I appreciate it.
What's our biggest dream for Tap Cancer Out?
That's a really good question.
Well, just a few years ago, you didn't think you would be doing this full time.
Yeah, no. So, there's not like an there's not like an ultimate thing, because once we reach that thing, I just want to keep going. I'll tell you sort of our next landmark is $1 million gift, which was supposed to be this year. And if we had hosted all of our events, we would have sort of given that $1 million gift, but that's obviously not going to happen this year. But I'm very confident / wishful that it'll happen next year. I'd love to grow our Tap Cancer Out team as well, just in terms of like full-time employees, and get more people creating content in here. And it's nice having a small team, but I'd love to grow that as well. But me personally, I don't have much more to achieve. I've run my own business with my wife. We have a lot of freedom, enough freedom that we were able to move out of our home state that we lived in for many, many years, down to Charlotte to sort of find a sort of a more affordable and better quality of life for our kids. And So I just want to continue to make more impact. This year was our first year where we have multiple beneficiaries. So we always only just had one, and we would give them a big gift at the end of the year. And that gift kept getting bigger and bigger. It goes from 100 to 200 to 400 to 876 was our gift to Alex's Lemonade Stand last year.
Wow.
So that's when we were like, okay, now this money can sort of be spread out and make impact across many different sort of cancer disciplines. So we continue to work with Alex's, but we have 9 beneficiaries, so we can work with, cancer survivorship. So Camp Sunshine in Maine is for children who are dealing with cancer and breast cancer, cervical cancer. We have an international program in Africa that is training people out there to identify cervical cancer. And so just continuing to make that wide impact is all I'm looking for. When we make that $1 million gift in a year, so it's 9 different grants that all add up to $1 million, and that'd be awesome. And I know we're going to hit it. And then after that, it's like, okay, and then it's 2 million. I can't wait till we do 2 million. And then it's okay, I can't wait till we do 5 million. I want to get to newer cities. I think we added around 8 or so new cities this year that we were supposed to hit. So we're going to be in Colorado Springs, Dallas, Miami, Jacksonville. We haven't gone to those cities yet. So looking forward to actually going to those cities and hosting our tournaments there and continuing to add more to the schedule. It's one thing that I've not struggled with, but I think about a lot. Like when you look at the schedules of like Naga and Grappling Industries, I mean, they do a tremendous amount of events in a year, and I applaud them because I don't even know how they sort of do it. I still have to be at every single event, and maybe that's my own narcissism a bit. I'm sure that the event would be just fine if I wasn't there, but do I want to be traveling every single weekend? I already travel half the weekends of the year. So I leave my family half the weekends of the year. And that's a lot when you have young children. What is going to be that number of events that we're like happy with? Is it 25? Is it 45? We can always add more cities, but so trying to figure out that mix is something I struggle with a lot because, I don't want to be away too much, but.
And there's another question: will quality change?
Correct.
If the amount of events increases, right? So, I mean, obviously, your goal is very different from the other events. Theirs is purely revenue driven. Yours is more of revenue too, but in the sense of we're doing this for different reasonings, right? So, and not to take away from other tournaments, but my question always is when it comes to business, just increasing quantity does not increase quality.
Correct.
Right? That's, I think, the important part. So we don't see you often, but we know once you arrive, this is it. And that's something you spoke about earlier, just a few minutes ago, right? Good for you. I mean, I think you've done amazing things over past 7 years.
I mean, our first tournament was in 2012, so this is our 8th year of hosting.
8th year.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. The numbers that you are throwing in, over $800,000. I mean, that is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It's been in total. It's a little over, I think 2.3 or 2.4 million. I don't know, it's in my email signature, but over $2 million in total gifts to our beneficiaries over the years. And
amazing.
It is. My sister, I've talked about this before. My sister was one of those people that gave up their careers, and she now works for Special Olympics Illinois. So I see numbers come by every once in a while, you know, and to see how much you guys have put together and put out there in that short time span, is really incredible. And when I was I had heard about you, of course. And so when I was doing a little bit of research and really started to see, the impact that you're having, I was blown away by it. And Thomas and I were kind of worried about what this year had done for you guys, or to you guys. And it's great to hear, that And obviously now talking to you, I can see why that things are still, they're not as great as you would hoped, but things are still going strong. And hopefully when this mess is all over with, next year you'll be right back at it.
Yeah. It was definitely a trying year. There were days and weeks where I didn't, know how long we would both have full-time jobs here. It was scary, but we sort of weathered the storm, and I had to reach out to major donors. We applied for every grant possible. We did everything we could. We counted every dollar. I mean, I was like emailing every single donor that would donate in a day and thanking them. Whereas like in a typical day, the donations just fly by. So it was amazing how much I had realized I had taken for granted. And then cherishing every single donation that was coming in and every single fundraiser who was continuing to fundraise, even though they weren't even sure if they were having an event or if their event had already been canceled and they just wanted to continue to fundraise. We actually launched our recurring giving program, which we call the Podium, in April, like the worst time we could have ever launched a program like this, but we had to, like, it was critical. And I reached out to friends and family, and
but for those who are not familiar with it, can you briefly mention how's that work?
Yeah, so it's a lot of us are used to just sort of seeing somebody fundraising and donating to that fundraiser, or vice versa. You just once a year you do your fundraising thing, but one of the most useful things to nonprofits, instead of giving $200 once, is to give $10, $15, $20 a month. Every month. We subscribe to all these things. I'm sure there are some subscriptions we all have that we don't even realize we're still paying for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So sort of everything has turned to a subscription model, and it's super helpful for all nonprofits with recurring giving, because we can plan on having that revenue each month. So we set a goal, and it wasn't even a monetary goal. It was just a number of goals. I didn't care how much people chose to give in a month, but I just wanted 50 members in the first month of the Podium, and we had exactly 53 in the first 2 weeks. We had some people giving extremely generously, and we had some people who were just giving $5 a month, and it's all very much appreciated. Most nonprofits, I mean, with much bigger numbers, will experience around like 5% churn every month, so that 5% of your recurring giving donors will stop giving. We've lost one of those 53 have stopped giving. So people have stuck with us, and there are people on that list who I actually had, we'll call it, a customer service issue with. And I didn't think they were ever going to come back to our event, and they ended up being one of the first 50 to join the Podium and give to us every single month. So that support was crazy, but very much appreciated, and it helped us survive through the months. And once we're back to hosting tournaments, see, that's the big thing. We got the Podium going. We got our brand ambassador program going. We created Global Giving Day. Global Grappling Day, which is December 12th, which people can still register for and take part of. And we can talk about what that is. But so all these things we sort of created to support us during this time. But next year, hopefully, if things are back to normal, we're back to hosting the same amount of events that we do, and we're making through those events the same amount of revenue. On top of that, we have a recurring giving program. And on top of that, we have these brand ambassadors that are going crazy, selling our merch and doing their own fundraising. And we still have Global Grappling Day on a yearly basis. So this time, while very stressful and trying, has sort of forced us, turning coal into diamonds. It was a lot of pressure, but it's forced us to come up with these different programs and different ways to survive that will help us create even more impact in the future. So while our 2020 is certainly way down than what we had expected, I can almost guarantee our 2021, should we host the same number of events that we expect to, will be way better than our 2021 would have been if nothing had happened. So we're actually going to come out better on the other side of this once it's all over. So,
do you think the worst is behind us?
No,
as far as COVID.
no,
No,
it's getting worse. It's getting worse by the day.
Yeah.
But I also think that the results for vaccines are promising and stuff. I mean, I'm not into that space. I don't know anything about that stuff, but there will be an end to this someday. We've pushed, so we would typically have our West Coast events in January and our Connecticut event in March. We've already pushed those. So our first tournament isn't scheduled until May 1st. So hopefully by that time we can host the event, and we still, have the opportunity to do, sort of what we're doing now with our showcases, where, we're actually raising more money at the showcases than we ever have before, but, we don't have spectators and things like that. So we can still host a tournament with no spectators, separate out the mats so everybody's away from each other. There's a lot of things we can do to create, social distancing and everyone wearing their mask inside, and different timing so people know exactly when they need to be there and they can leave as soon as they're done. They're not lingering. There's a lot of things that we can do that I think will allow us to host events by next May, even if things aren't back to quote unquote normal, because who knows when that'll be. But especially with our showcases and just looking at what other tournaments are doing, we're learning a lot about how we can make a safer environment for our competitors.
Well, just like you mentioned, this is time to try. This is time to experiment in a way and adapt. Maybe experiment is not the word, but adapt to the new situation. And as we're getting into closer and in to 21, this situation might not completely disappear. There will be some adjustments that everybody's going to have to make. And but I'm pretty confident that at some point, all of this is going to go away, just like you mentioned. More importantly, did you fix your scoreboard so RŌL Academy shows up correctly? I heard that story.
So we use Smooth Comp. Smooth Comp donates their software to us, which is very, very generous, because their pricing is basically $1 a competitor per event. So you can imagine with the size of some of our events, that can be pretty costly. But so and our tournaments have been drastically changed since we were able to implement that scoreboard. And I will reach out to them.
I'm just messing
directly.
I actually leave it.
Do not waste 1 second of your time.
This is an international. Actually, it's an international platform. So
and
they're actually
that
in Europe.
changes
So
things.
we were one of the first U.S. Tournaments to actually use it. Now, pretty much everybody uses it unless they have a proprietary software of their own, like the IBJJF does. But so they must know how to fix this. I actually think it has to do with us uploading our data as opposed to people registering on the Smooth Comp site, which every other tournament does. But because our competitors have to register on the fundraising platform, that requires us to then take that data and upload it into Smooth Comp, and then we have character issues with that. But well, just for you, I will figure it out.
I had to ask. It makes a good story. Listen, John, before we wrap this up, we have 5 questions for you. We didn't tell you this. We do this every episode. Nope. We're gonna put you on a spot. Answer, as quick as you can. The first thing that really comes to your mind. Gary's going to take a lead on this one, but some of them are serious, some of them are funny. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah. And I hope that this story that I have in my head about you is that it pertains to this question. And that question is, what was it like the first time you stepped on the mat?
Like competition or just the jiu-jitsu mat in general?
Just the jiu-jitsu mat in general.
It was exhilarating and terrifying. I'll never forget. I did too many forward rolls.
This is what I'm looking for. Yes.
And I went dizzy, and I almost and I crashed into the wall, and it was super embarrassing. Yeah. And but yeah.
Before you got on, Gary was like, "I have to ask him this. I have to ask him. This is so funny."
Yeah.
I did something similar in a kids class. But I played it off as I was. I don't remember why, but they didn't know what bear crawls were, or there was new or something. So I bear crawled, hauling ass across the mat, and when I went to stand up, I fell forward. And so I just did a forward roll, and I got up and I threw my arms out like it was part of the performance. And all the kids were like, "Yeah, that was cool." And I could see Thomas across the mat, and he was just like, Can't believe I'm letting this guy
There's
in.
a video.
Can't believe he's in here. Yeah. But all right. With everything you've done, I think the answer to this is pretty obvious. But what has been your most rewarding achievement?
So I don't think the answer is going to be obvious. My most rewarding achievement has been employing my wife. A lot of people, there are certain people, now I shouldn't say a lot of people, there are certain people in my life that were not so sure that this could be a sustainable full-time thing. And employing my wife would create even more of a risk. Should it fail, now we both fail.
Right.
And one of the worries, this summer, like losing a job would totally suck. If we had to temporarily lay ourselves off until we start hosting events again or whatever. But this is where we get our health insurance from and our kids' health insurance from. So like we could freelance, advertising stuff, but how would we have healthcare? And so that was like terrifying. But not just to be able to do it myself, but to employ her and to really be able to do this as a team, and to know that neither of us sort of have to have that dread on Sunday night when you go to bed and you're like, oh, this was such a great weekend. Totally sucks that I have to go to work tomorrow morning. Like we don't feel it at all. I forget what day it is all the time. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it all sort of feels the same to me. I mean, especially during quarantine, when the kids, obviously weren't in school. And so, but yeah, being able to have created something that could actually employ her and give her an outlet to do what she's passionate about. And that's very rewarding for me.
Wonderful. You haven't said her name yet?
Becky.
Becky. All right, Becky. Thank you so much. All right. Have you ever wanted to quit?
Tap cancer out?
Well, this usually pertains to just jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But
jiu-jitsu,
you can take it either way.
So the answer is no to both.
Great.
And, so I haven't trained jiu-jitsu since February. And there's a number of reasons for that. But, I don't think like quitting jiu-jitsu would be a big thing. Like you would have to physically not ever go to jiu-jitsu ever again. Like you can take long breaks or whatever, but you don't ever have to quit jiu-jitsu. The mats are always there. And that, when people get injuries, bad injuries and stuff, I try to tell them the mats are always going to be there. Don't worry about it. Like, I know it sucks, and that's what I tell myself now. Like, I don't know when I'll be able to go back and train, but the mats will always be there. And so I certainly haven't quit jiu-jitsu. And tap cancer out? Heck no. I do think about it, like, what if I stopped liking this someday? But I don't know. That's hard to, you have good days and bad days, just like with any other job, but there's just so many more positives to what we do. Just, so we're new to the Charlotte area. My wife and I drove into the city and found a random spot to have lunch at today. Like, those are just things we couldn't do when we were working in 2 different offices in 2 different towns. And like, if we ever met for lunch, like that was amazing. So just to be able to do little things like that, my son just started school physically for the first time in months. And we picked him up together every day since he started. And so for him to come out of school, and, I was a person, my parents never picked me up ever a day in my life from school. So for him to see both his parents sitting in the car, that's just really cool. So there's so many positives to what we're doing. And the feeling of writing the big numbers on the big fake check to our beneficiary, like that day is always such an awesome day. Like, It's like Christmas Day when I wake up and know that I'm going to go and give him a gift. And actually last year at Alex's, we never told them how much we were going to give them. I generally, we don't promise. We did this year because we had to carve out exactly how much we were going to give our beneficiaries, which of course we're not going to be able to do. But in past years, it was just like, we're going to try to raise as much money as possible and give it to you. So they didn't know. In our first year gift to Alex's was $400, little over $400,000. So they just thought they were getting that again.
Mm-hmm.
So when Becky started writing an 8, when the first number was an 8, Liz and Jay are the co-founders of Alex's Lemonade Stand. They're the parents of Alex.
Yeah.
And so Liz was sitting there and she almost like passed out, like almost fell over in her chair, because when you think it's going to be one number and it's double that. So like that was just such a fun experience. And she walked around the whole office holding up the check and everybody was clapping, and that's super cool. So I don't know, you can't get that anywhere else. I don't think I'll ever want to quit this.
That's awesome. Remember when I said I was grumpy today? All right. Describe your feelings when you received your black belt.
Whew. Number one, exhaustion. So I had to do the hour-long gauntlet, which is a fresh brown or black belt. I think every 2 minutes. I got one 2-minute break at the 30-minute mark. But that was the most miserable jiu-jitsu experience of my life. That hour, that was horrible. And there were people who were cutting in line to get 3 or 4 shots at me. Like there were people like, and I didn't even know them.
You got some good friends.
These are black belts from other academies and stuff. And it was really like, you're okay. If you're going to be a black belt, if you're going to be one of us, you're going to take it. So I'm like, isn't this your 6th time? What are you doing? I don't even know your name. But my wife, my daughter, my son were there. My parents were there. So it was, it was awesome. It was an incredible moment of pride. I am not a great jiu-jitsu practitioner. I'm as average as they come. I've won tournaments. I've lost lots of tournaments. All I did was not stop going. Luckily, knock on wood, I never had any real major injuries. And I mean, aside from this pandemic, I just never stopped going to class. I wasn't one of those twice a day, 6 days a week or whatever. I always had other stuff to do, but I went pretty solidly 2 to 3 times a week, every week for 10 years. And I got my black belt, so don't worry about your accomplishments. You don't even have to ever compete at a tournament if you don't want to. Just enjoy the journey of jiu-jitsu and what the sport can do for you and your life and your mental well-being and your physical well-being. And I promise you, if you don't stop going, they have to give you the black belt. They can't not give it to you.
Yeah, hear that, Thomas?
Just keep going. Yeah, you can be atrocious. They'll give you the black belt.
There's hope. There's hope.
Or
I feel
13 like you're 14. You're like, hello.
There is hope
now.
For Gary.
We've just met, and I feel like he's talking directly to. All right, look, here's the most important.
John, look, he was so grumpy, and look at the big smile of Gary's
now
face.
He's going to get a black belt very soon. Now.
Yeah. Woo. Although, if you know my age, I might not have 10 to 14 more years to go. All right, here's the most important one. And do you wash your belt?
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of controversy around that one.
Oh my God! Wash your belt. Wear your mask and wash your belt. Come on.
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. I remember actually I did karate when I was a kid, and I remember not washing your belt was like a super important thing to them. But seeing how much I sweat in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's different.
No,
it's a different animal.
Yeah, it's just like your gi, and your gi is so disgusting after a class. Imagine, I don't wash it after every single class, but I definitely wash it weekly-ish. Come on.
All right, there we go. I lost my tally, but I think we're 3 or 4 now on the wash your belt side. We do have plenty of people who
do wash their belts, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
John, what a beautiful story. Thanks for hanging out with us and sharing all the awesome things and not so awesome things that you passed. All the obstacles on the way to awesomeness, and there's yet so much more ahead of you guys. Where can people find you? And obviously we'll post all the details in the show notes. But if you want to share briefly any links, social media, where can people find you? Where they can donate? Where they can give you? Where they can support?
Yes. I'd be happy to. So, of course, tapcancerout.org is the website. We have a super active Instagram account as well. Just look up Tap Cancer Out. If you want to take part in Global Grappling Day, it's December 12th. It's virtual. You can do it anywhere you want. You don't have to do it at an academy. Do it in your living room or whatever. You find one partner and you roll for 1 hour. And don't worry, I'm not like watching anybody do this, so you can take breaks if you need it or whatever. But it's just a sort of a catalyst for people to create impact through the lens of jiu-jitsu, and sort of a fun thing that they can do relatively safely. My partner was Dave, and then we moved down here to Charlotte, and we weren't sure when he was going to move down here. And my wife, who has never rolled a day in her life, earnestly volunteered to roll with me for an hour to make sure I could do my Global Grappling Day hour roll. And she's like, I'll do it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it.
Margaret.
And that was like that was so incredibly nice. And luckily Dave is going to move here the weekend before, so I'll be able to roll with him. But
so she's not going to do it. Becky's not.
Yeah, she got saved. She got saved. But
I was going to use that as the catalyst for my wife.
She was willing to. But yeah, globalgrapplingday.com. We have people from all over the world. One of our top fundraisers this past week, because we do a weekly fundraiser leaderboard, is from Canada. We have people from Hong Kong and Australia and all over the place that are fundraising on our behalf. And so we're really excited about that. So literally anyone can do it. globalgrapplingday.com. We have one more showcase on not this Saturday, but next. So November 21st. So if you're listening to this before November 21st, we stream it live on our Facebook Saturday evening. And that is going to be one of our most impactful showcases that we've had as well. That might approach the $50,000 mark. Certainly the most fights we've ever had in a card. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, we're all over the place, Instagram, Facebook. But if you want to take part, globalgrapplingday.com, or just find us on Instagram and say hi.
Yeah, we'll make sure to post that all in the notes and everywhere where we are, and we'll share also some of the content that you guys are doing as well to support that day, December 12th, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
All right, beautiful.
All right.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for sharing your story, and we'll be waiting for you to come to Chicago.
I can't wait. Chicago's always been super good to us.
Thanks for changing my mood, and thanks for everything you're doing, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. Peace.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. Check out all future episodes on our website and all major podcast platforms. Take care.